What's going on, YouTube? This is SG1 Sports here on the Iowa channel at the Voice of College Football. We're going to preview the 2023 schedule for the Hawkeyes. Before we get to 2023, let's look back at 2022. So here was the schedule for Iowa last season. You see an 8-5 record, 7-5 in the regular season. Had a really tough stretch right there in the middle. Michigan, Illinois, Ohio State. Three really tough games there in a row. Still surprised that they lost to Iowa State, but you know that was a tough one there. And then losing at home to Nebraska was a bit of a surprise, given the fact that they were able to go on the road and beat Purdue, beat Wisconsin, go on the road and beat Minnesota. Again, that Nebraska loss was a bit of a surprise. So, you know, an okay season for Iowa last year. You look at who they played out of the East. You know, they had Rutgers, they had Michigan and Ohio State. So Michigan and Ohio State out of the East. That made for a pretty tough schedule in the Big Ten. Looking ahead to 2023, in the non-conference, they'll play Utah State. They'll play on the road at Iowa State, and then they get Western Michigan at home. Road games at Penn State, they get Michigan State and Rutgers at home. So Iowa State and Penn State, the two road games in outside of the division, and the other four games here at home. Not quite as bad against the East. Again, Penn State is going to be tough, very tough on the road, but no Michigan, no Ohio State. Michigan State and Rutgers figure to be in the bottom half of the East. So this is a pretty good draw there, and outside of Iowa State, really nothing tough in the non-conference. All right, so let's go week by week. They will open up with Utah State on September the 2nd, a game that Iowa should be able to take care of business in. Iowa State after that on the 9th. Again, surprise loss last year. We'll see what happens this year. That rivalry is always exciting. Iowa has gotten the better of Iowa State most seasons, so that'll be interesting. Very interesting to see what happens in that one. Western Michigan on the 16th. Then they'll play at Penn State on September the 23rd. That'll be the very first Big Ten game. So they play all three of their non-conference games first. Then they get into Big Ten play, and not an easy start with a road game at Penn State. On September the 30th, they get Michigan State at home, then Purdue at home on October the 7th. Follow that up with a road game at Wisconsin on the 14th. Seems like they usually play that game a little bit later in the year, but they'll play kind of right in the middle there on October 14th this year. Minnesota on the 21st. Then they get a bye week, so their bye week comes pretty late in the year and not an ideal spot. I mean, it's right before Northwestern and Rutgers. You'd like to have that maybe before Wisconsin. That would probably be a better spot for a bye week. But they'll play Northwestern. They play that game in Chicago. They'll play Rutgers on November 11th, and then Illinois on the 18th. That could possibly be a big game in the division. And also this last one at Nebraska. They'll play once again on the Friday after Thanksgiving, and they will play them on the road this year. So you look at the schedule. I would say it's a little bit easier than last year, just because of the fact that you trade Ohio State and Michigan for Michigan State and Penn State. I think that's easier. You get to play Rutgers, who's probably the worst team out of the East. So pretty good draw there out of the East. The non-conference is not all that tough. Of course, they do play Iowa State like they always do, but they don't have any other really tough game outside of that one. So this gives them a good shot, I think, to get to the Big Ten championship. You look at their games against the West. They get Purdue at home. They get Minnesota at home. They get Illinois at home. They will have Northwestern on a neutral field, which is really kind of more like a home game for Northwestern. But we'll see how that one goes. And then Wisconsin and Nebraska on the road. So those, the way I'm looking at the Big Ten West, I think it's wide open. But Wisconsin and Nebraska and Iowa, maybe those are the three favorites, and they do have to play the other two favorites on the road, so that is kind of tough. And the bye week's not at a great spot, so there are some things that could obviously make this schedule a little bit better for Iowa. But again, when you get rid of Ohio State and Michigan, I think that makes for a pretty happy Iowa fan base and a schedule that's going to be a little bit easier for them in 2023.